Welcome to the Fintech One-on-One podcast. This is Peter Renton, Chairman and co-founder of Fintech Nexus. I've been doing these shows since 2013, which makes this the longest-running one-on-one interview show in all of fintech. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you like this podcast, you should check out our sister shows, Pitch It, the Fintech Startups podcast with Todd Anderson, and Fintech Coffee Break with Isabel Castro. Or you can listen to everything we produce by subscribing to the Fintech Nexus podcast channel. Before we get started, I want to remind you about our comprehensive news service. Fintech Nexus News not only covers the biggest fintech news stories, our daily newsletter delivers the 10 most important fintech stories into your inbox every morning. And we have special editions for Latin America as well as UK and Europe. Stay on top of fintech news by subscribing at news.fintechnexus.com/subscribe. Today on the show, we have an interview I did at Fintech Nexus LatAm on December 13th. I interviewed Carlos Brandt. He is the head of Pix at the Central Bank of Brazil. Now, if you haven't heard of Pix, you really should have. It is probably the most successful fintech product in the history of the world. And Carlos is one of the founders of Pix. We talk about some of the backstory, what made Pix successful, and why it has become such a phenomenon, bringing in over 60 million people who have never done a digital transaction before into the financial system for the first time in Brazil. Truly a stunning product and something that I think we all should learn from. And I think this is an episode, even if you're not interested in Latin American fintech, you will find fascinating. Hope you enjoy the show. We are now going to talk about Pix. Pix, I think, is probably the greatest success story, certainly of the last decade in all of fintech globally. And we're delighted to have with us here today one of the architects of Pix, who is going to talk not just about what's happened, but what is going to happen with Pix. We're very excited to have with us Carlos Brandt. Why don't we kick it off by give the audience a perspective on the origins of Pix and your role in it.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Fintech Nexus, for inviting me to this very nice conference. I am the head of the Management and Operations of Pix at the Central Bank of Brazil. I've been working for the Central Bank and in payments for 20 years, and I have been engaged in the Pix project since the very beginning. We kind of thought about a new payment ecosystem from the scratch that could help the central bank and, of course, the whole society to achieve some very important public objectives. And that's how we started to design and to define the basic characteristics of Pix since the beginning.
Did you have any idea that it would be as successful as quickly as it has been when you launched?
Well, we thought it would be successful because we were very careful in terms of defining the goals, defining the objectives, and also defining how Pix would be designed to achieve those objectives. So we really thought we would be successful, but of course, the speed that everything happened was a surprise for everyone. I mean, it was very fast. In 2 years of operation, we have more than 2.5 billion transactions per month, more than any other payment instrument. I mean, it's very impressive how fast people and businesses adopted Pix.
Right. You know, we chatted in Mexico City a few months ago, and you talked about the role of your son, who was fairly young, but you talked about the role of your son in the design of the Pix experience. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting story because one thing that was very important in Pix for the public objectives, remember that we have among the public objectives financial inclusion. And to achieve financial inclusion, we need a very simple, a very intuitive solution for people in general. Of course, we need complex solution for businesses, and we did that. But to achieve this characteristics of being very intuitive, very simple solution to everyone, we were very obsessed about user experience. I mean, we would like to have in place solution in any PSP that was part of the Pix ecosystem that would be good no matter each PSP you would be connected to. So we define it as we call UX requirements. Those are basics of UX implementation for apps that all PSPs want to or need to implement. And to have a very, very simple, intuitive solution, I hired a special advisor, which was my son back then. He was 9 years old at the time. We got options and alternatives from experts in UX, of course. We gathered specialists from the central bank, from the industry, and got all the possible solutions to implement in terms of UX requirements. But whenever we had two options, I would take to my special advisor and to make sure that we would choose the very, very simple solution for Pix.
Okay, that's really interesting. So let's talk about the rollout, because you rolled out to banks and non-banks as well. Why did you sort of like do both types of payment companies?
Great. As I said, we were very ambitious in terms of public objectives, a lot of public objectives in just one project. And financial inclusion, getting frictionless electronic payments, and so on. But one public objective was getting or improving competition in the payment system and in the financial market as a whole, in a more broad sense. And to achieve competition, it was very important. I mean, we had a clear view that non-banks and especially fintechs were a very important component of the ecosystem to achieve competition. Let's say the first step to get to the final objective was to build a regulatory framework for non-banks. So we did that in 2013 in order to get those new entrants in a safe way. So it would be safe for non-banks because they would know in a clear way what the regulator would require from them. And also it was safe for the clients because they would trust fintechs, non-banks, and so on. They would know that the central bank would be supervising and that they would have a strong risk management framework. So the foundation was ready with, let's say, this piece of regulation. And the second stage was to build a new ecosystem from scratch and to design the ecosystem in a way that the access would be very open to banks, open to non-banks. And we defined a very equal, let's say, joining process, a level playing field. I mean, the joining process would have to be unified, either for banks and for non-banks. But it's not only a matter of giving access, but a matter of giving access at the same time.
Right.
So we established a joining process for banks and non-banks since day one. I mean, they could join Pix since day one, as long as, of course, they would meet the operational requirements that we had in this joining process. They would have to prove that they were capable to meet these operational requirements. We would have to make sure that they would also have their apps compliant with the UX requirements and so on. But the main thing was improving competition, getting a level playing field for non-banks, and to get them into the system, as I said, at the same time.
Right. And did you mandate that banks had to join, had to make things available? I mean, there's been other initiatives in other countries that have not rolled out as, even close to as successful as what Pix has done. How did you encourage the different players in the ecosystem to really come in and, be an active player?
Yeah. Well, we're talking about competition, right? So we know that the incumbents or the big players would kind of resist a little bit to get into a competitive ecosystem. And the others, of course, would would join in a voluntary basis, of course. So we mandated, we put a must-join rule for banks that, or not only banks, but for any institution that would offer more than 500,000 active accounts for clients, for customers. So they would have to join since day one. And of course, the rest of the system, banks and non-banks, could join since day one, as I said, at the same time. And so that's how we put everyone together and we achieved critical mass and so on in a very, very early stage.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the latest number of how many people have been added to Pix that have never had any kind of digital account before?
These numbers are growing a lot during this. So I try to keep up with that number every month because it keeps changing a lot. But the last number I have is 64 million people that were put into the system or that made their first digital transaction with Pix. And that's very impressive. It stands for, I don't know, half of the adult population in Brazil.
Right.
It really impressed us. And at the same time, it made us happy because we're achieving financial inclusion, digital inclusion, and many other things.
Let's just pause on that. 64 million people who didn't have a digital account, but now they do. I mean, that's transformational. And it's interesting because one of the things that I was talking to somebody who said that they lived in Brazil, had a housekeeper, and they said, I don't have a bank account. I just have Pix with HSBC. So it's like you've branded this as such that people who don't trust banks have a Pix account, not realizing they actually have a bank account as well. So what has that meant for Brazil? I mean, obviously, when you had this mandate to sort of bring all this new technology to the whole population, I mean, what's it mean now that 64 million people now are using digital payments?
Yeah. Well, that's very, very important for Brazil in many different aspects. The first thing that I could mention here is the capability or the possibility that the individuals have to make frictionless and no-cost payments. I mean, payments is something that everyone does every day, right? So instead of people having cash and have to worry about, security and cash in their pockets and so on, and change and everything, they now have access to a very intuitive, simple, and no-cost solution. So that's the first gain that we achieved. But it's more than that, because when people access the financial system, they start to get access to not only to payments, but to credit, to investments, to insurance, something that they didn't have access at all, right? And that's important for the people, but it's very important for the financial system as well, because it's new opportunities, new business opportunities for all the financial system. So we added business opportunities as well with that inclusion process. But more than that, more than getting people into the financial system, but once they have that possibility of having an electronic payments, they start to get access to digital services, something that they didn't have. They didn't have access to ride apps or to food apps or so on, because they didn't have a mean of payment. They didn't have anything, or they didn't have how to pay for digital services. But they did have already mobile phones, and they use social media and everything. We put that into perspective as well. We are adding also new opportunities for the whole economy. I mean, new businesses could achieve those 64 million people that were included. So we could see that financial inclusion in a very wide perspective to see how important that has been to Brazil.
Right. So what about e-commerce? Has that sort of flowed into e-commerce now that people have an account? You know, obviously, there's lots of fintechs focused on the e-commerce space as well. What can you say about how Pix has kind of boosted that?
I mean, it's a use case that has been adopted, Pix, in a very fast way as well. Pix serves e-commerce with a fast, secure solution for them. When we compare Pix with Boleto and credit card, which are the most accepted payment instruments in e-commerce, we see that Pix is more convenient and it's faster than Boleto, and Pix is safer and cheaper than credit card. So from the business perspective, it makes sense just for these basic characteristics. But it's more than that. I mean, Boleto is not compatible with any use case because it's not instant. So you don't get instant confirmation in the Boleto. So any use case that needs an instant confirmation, they can accept Boleto. So it's only credit card. But credit card, not everybody have access to credit card, right? Because sometimes it's expensive, people have to pay fees, or sometimes they don't have a credit score, and so on. So there are many people that didn't have access to e-commerce because they didn't have how to pay. And so Pix is offering a good solution for e-commerce, and also is offering the possibility of having a greater or a bigger customer base for all the businesses.
Right. So obviously there's a lot of person-to-person payments in Pix, and there's also person-to-businesses. Mm-hmm. What are you doing to help kind of accelerate business-to-business adoption? Is that part of what you're looking at?
Yeah, that's part of what we're looking at. Of course, Pix, just giving a step behind, Pix is designed to serve any use case, right? B2B, P2B, P2P, and so on. The first use case, of course, would be the P2P, because everything that we would need for P2P transaction would be an app ready, and we did that since day one. And of course, people would have to know that the apps were ready. So that was the first use case to be widely adopted. And P2B has been widely adopted, or has growing a lot, especially in 2022, in this last year, because all the integration needed for the P2B were done in the 2021 and early 2022. So it has been growing a lot. We had, in the first month of operation in Pix, only 5% of P2B transactions, and we have now 25% of P2B transactions. Okay. And we foresee that's going to grow a lot, much more than 25% in this market share. And of course, B2B is the smallest share. It's only 3% of the Pix transactions. But there are some reasons for that. I mean, the first reason is that it demands IT investments to adapt the ERP solutions. It also demands standardized or specialized solutions from the PSPs to the companies in order to allow them to make batch payments, and also to have multiple authorization layers processed, especially for big tickets payments. And also we have a credit transfer that is working quite well for that use case. So it's naturally the last use case that is going to be widely adopted in Brazil, but we do have special products, and we are designed improvements in order to help the B2B, especially the batch payments, allowing batch payments into Pix as well.
Right. Okay, so we saw earlier this month the governor of the Central Bank of Brazil talk about opening up the Pix protocols to other central banks to allow them to basically copy what you guys have done. What's the thinking there, and does that benefit Brazil, or what's the sort of thought process?
Well, the main goal is to improve cross-border payments. Right. We are trying to figure out ways to improve those type of payments. It's not an easy task. We do have a special, as we call, product in our working agenda, which is called Pix Internacional, which is International Pix. And that product, it's not defined how we're going to do it yet, so we have many possibilities. One possibility is to have a multilateral platform to connect different instant payment ecosystems and so on. Another possibility is to link two ecosystems or two instant payment ecosystems, Pix with multiple different ecosystems in other jurisdictions. And another way would be to deliver the Pix code for different jurisdictions, and of course, and open that code, and of course, will be easier to connect bilaterally. We don't have yet the decision to really open the code and so on. It's something that we are thinking about. We're analyzing how to do it, the risks involved, and if that really is the way to move forward. But it's something that is on the, let's say, on the agenda of evolving the cross-border payments.
Okay, we have a lot of questions coming in here. 21 questions.
21.
So we're not going to get to them all.
No.
But let's start off with some of the top ones here. So how is Pix, is it Pacaledo, going to work? Do you consider it a substitute of the credit card?
We don't consider Pix a substitute, or we don't have intention to replace any type of instant or any type of payment instrument. There are some payment instruments, for example, Boleto, which Pix has, I would say, some characteristics, some capabilities that Boleto doesn't have. And we really think it's going to be predominant in the midterm. But for credit card and for debit card and so on, we don't see as a substitute. We offer good solution. We offer low cost, simple, fast solution. And the other payment instruments, they have to, of course, to offer good solution as well. And if they do, they're going to still there for many years.
Right. Okay, another interesting one here. Is there a place for crypto payment rails alongside Pix?
That's something that we are studying and, of course, taking a very close look at. We are also analyzing the digital real, the real digital, or the CBDC as we call. And of course, we are analyzing how the crypto world could connect or benefit or exist in parallel with Pix. We don't have a final conclusion or something that we could state in a very clear way. But the only thing that we could say here for sure is that we're taking a very close look at it.
Okay, fair enough. So what about there's one here about financial scams, and we've heard about some of these stories in the press. What is next in line on the Pix roadmap to try to block or prevent financial scams and crimes on Pix?
Mm-hmm. That's nice. Well, we have announced actually 2 weeks ago our working agenda for 2023 in the Forum Pix, or in the Pix Forum that we have. And that forum, of course, is the place where we discuss and we submit consultations and so on to the community and to of course, the stakeholders. And one very important piece of this working agenda is related to security. So we announced pretty much two very important. We have a few other ones, but we announced 2 very important measures in regards to security. The first one is to mark, as we call, or to input in a database information of fraudsters, not only accounts, but the person. We have a database that has the information that a specific account was used in a fraud. It's usually a mule account, right? So instead of marking an account, we're going to mark the person. So no matter PSP, they open the account, and many times they open account with good documents, and they're good persons, but they just let the fraudster use their accounts for fraud. We are marking the person, and so we are going to prevent that the mule account is going to be used for fraud. So that's a very important one. And the second one is an improvement in our special refund mechanism that's going to be able to not only to get the money, get the refund from the first account that received the funds from a fraud, but we're going to be able to track that money, and no matter where is the final point of that money, we're going to be able to get the refund, of course, if the money is still there, right? So those are the 2 most important features that we announced 2 weeks ago. And we also announced a new business product. It's not related to security as well, to fraud or anything, but we announced the Pix Automático, which is a very important product for recurring payments. We presented preliminary specs for authorization, for payment scheduling, for payment settlement. We're going to submit that specs for consultation in the Pix forum and for the selected companies as well. I mean, we are developing the ecosystem.
Right. Okay, I think we just have time for one more. Let's do this one. What is on the roadmap for the next 5 years?
Well, for the next 5 years, we don't really know yet. We have, as I said, we have the working agenda for 2023. That's something that we could say for sure. And the working agenda has components on safety and security, and also components on the business side. And for the 2023, we have the Pix Automático, or the recurring payments in Pix. And that's for sure, that's what we are going to dedicate our energy, our work for 2023. We don't know yet when it's going to be live. We don't have a go live date yet, but that's something that we're going to work for sure. And for the next 5 years, we don't know in each order we're going to move on and we're going to implement new features, but we have the Pix Internacional, or the international Pix related to cross-border, which is top priority in our agenda. We also have the Pix Garantido, which is somewhat similar to what credit card does, serving the buy now, pay later use case. That's something also very, very important in our working agenda. We have the capability for batch payments to be implemented for the B2B transactions. We have different ways to initiate a payment, because right now we have the QR code and we have the Pix key, which you insert the alias, the mobile number, and so on. You just initiate a Pix. We wanted to get new technology and offer new ways to initiate a payment, for example. I would say those are the most important ones. But as we're talking about 5 years' time, we could see something in this period that we could get into the agenda, because new technologies could come, new business models, new needs from innovative business and so on could come in, and so we could put a new or different product in our working agenda for the 5-year time.
Okay, well, we'll have to leave it there, Carlos. Sorry we couldn't get to all the other questions, but really appreciate you coming to Miami to speak with us, and what a great job you guys have done.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
If you like the show, please go ahead and give it a review on the podcast platform of your choice. And be sure to tell your friends and colleagues about it. Anyway, on that note, I will sign off. I very much appreciate you listening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.